He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Want to know what's good to watch at the movies, or conversely, what you should avoid? Every Friday on Afternoons with me, Jesse Mulligan, our critic tells us what's hot and what's not in the world of cinema. Take a listen for the latest on new releases, behind-the-scenes dramas and scoops from directors with critic Dominic Corry. You may have seen a headline on RNZ yesterday. Michael is the worst biopic I've ever had to sit through. Author Dom Corry.
Yeah, I didn't actually write that line, but it's fair enough representation of my views.
We're just talking about this off air, not in terms of your things, but sometimes, yes, I'll be quite surprised to see the headline that goes alongside something I've written.
Yeah.
I was like, particularly when it's attributed to you.
Totally. It's usually, and it's often the only part people read of the whole thing. And it's the only bit you didn't write. Michael, wow. I don't know if I would have seen this film. Did I not have a professional obligation to?
Yeah.
I'm a kid of the 80s. He couldn't have meant more to me. I admit I still sometimes listen to his music. But I would never expect anyone to listen to it if they didn't want to, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know the backstory of this film, but it was backed by the estate, and the whole thing just reeks of asset management rather than storytelling or any kind of interrogation of who this person was, or even if you set aside all the awfulness and say, okay, this film exists, let's assess it in its own terms, it's still bad. But apparently it was reported that they had to scrap the whole third act of the film, which apparently centered around the first allegations from a child of abuse. And the storyline was apparently like these awful people who were extorting poor innocent Michael and this legal victory. But then they had to scrap it all because of a clause in the settlement contract with that accuser that prevented any depictions of it. And so it says everything about sort of where they're coming from with this, where it's the estate making sure that this property can make them lots of money going forward. But anyway, so setting aside all the ethical and moral issues, of which there are many.
On that, by the way, because I've heard the same thing said about the Amy Winehouse biopic, that it was an attempt by some people in her circle to rehabilitate their own reputations following the documentary.
Her dad, perhaps?
Or ex-boyfriend, or both.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, well, that had the benefit of perhaps some grey area, but it just couldn't be more obvious what's happening here. And I think, if you set all that aside and just say, okay, should this film do for people who want it to exist, I think a pop star biopic should provide an environment in which you can enjoy the music in a dramatic situation. You know, like Bohemian Rhapsody was pretty terrible as well, but at least you got to enjoy Another One Bites the Dust in a big moment.
Yep.
And even on that level, this kind of doesn't get there. He's played by his nephew, Jafar Jackson, Jermaine's son, who somewhat resembles him, but is under a lot of makeup and prosthetics as his face changes over the years. He can dance, that's for sure. His bottom is too big. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to say that?
Unclear.
And I just was bewildered by this, how many cliches it embraced in terms of pop star biopics. Like, there's actually a bit in this where there's record sales going through the roof, and there's two record company execs smoking cigars and cheersing glasses in an office. I mean, can we even, in 2026, how are we putting this in a movie? And there's a lot of focus on how awful his father was, which is very true. I mean, the whole thing's a tragedy. And I felt very uneasy watching this. As I said, I probably wouldn't have seen it. The comments on my written review show that a lot of people do want this film, and that's okay, I guess. But it stops around the bad tour, and it leaps 4 years ahead before that. The last 20 minutes is just a whole lot of songs. It feels like movie karaoke at times. Yeah. And there's again, even if you set aside the idea that they're going to interrogate his faults, there's no sense of him even as a character. He just talks about wanting to shine his light into the world.
Yeah.
And there was a persona of Michael Jackson that he presented in his music videos that this film sustains. And so it doesn't justify its existence. I think you'd be better off just watching all his music videos and enjoying the songs.
It doesn't make him more interesting as a personality.
No, it flattens him out, in fact. Bubbles is in here, which I was hoping for, the chimp. That was my one thing that I hope would show up. No Corey Feldman. They skip over a lot of stuff. They super simplify way too much. And I was just, shaking my head.
Michael.
But, some people seem to be liking it. So that's...
The Michael Jackson biopic, or bio-pic if you prefer. Well, a lot of people talking about this new local sort of doco-drama, Sergeant Haane.
Yeah, now this is an amazing film. It's about this Maori war hero who scaled this cliff in Tunisia in 1943 in North Africa, which is where a lot of New Zealand soldiers saw most of their action. And Tiapa Kahi, who directed this, his last film, Muru, was about the Urewera raid, so kind of a riff on that. And I had a similar sense of kind of like the way the story jumps around, and sometimes you're not clear what's true and what isn't. But the power coming off the screen in Sergeant Haane was just incredible.
Wow.
The slipping between documentary and drama is sometimes a little awkward, but when it settles into the World War II stuff, and there's these Alex Tarrant who plays Sergeant Haane, and Niwa Faturi and Vinnie Bennett. These are three of our arguably most exciting young actors, just being badass Maori soldiers in World War II, and kind of the cinematic potential of that is fulfilled in a great way. And but when it sort of jumps between interviews and telling the story, I sometimes was caught a little off guard by that. But throughout the film, I sort of realized that it's not conforming to some formal traditions of docudrama, but it's people telling their story in their own way. And I think it perhaps is a cinematic evocation of sort of the Maori oral tradition in a lot of ways, and the way that culture reveres its ancestors. It's portraying that in a way that is authentic to that culture.
That's an interesting observation, yeah.
Yeah, and it might at times sort of be a little jarring and compared to sort of how traditionally these stories might be told. But I felt that justified that informality. It spends a lot of time sort of declaring what it's saying and putting up titles on screen saying some people think this and we should think this, and it took a bit of getting used to, but in a weird way, it's sort of forming its own genre, and I liked it for that. And it's incredibly powerful, incredibly emotional, and it like Muru, it occasionally feels like Rambo as well. There's lots of influences in here, and yeah, I loved it. It comes out in theaters next Thursday, and unfortunately not in time for Anzac Day. But
well, no, Anzac Day's tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, the film's out next week.
I see. Sorry, yes, my
yeah, I highly recommend everyone go see it. I think it's an important film.
Sorry, my brain's not working. Thank you. That's Sergeant Haane, and there have been some really interesting interviews, including here on Afternoons. So I spoke with Mahuia Bridgman Cooper, who was responsible for the score.
Yeah, amazing score.
Got the Italian Film Festival coming up.
Yeah, this starts in Auckland on Tuesday and then rolls throughout the country. This is a hugely packed festival, Italian cinema popping off as it often does. I watched a selection from this last night called When Mum Is Away with the In-Laws, which is the third part of a comedy series about a bumbling dad and his family, and it took place in Puglia in the heel of the boot.
I love Puglia.
Same, and I was actually there a couple of years ago, staying in a masseria, like a farmhouse manor.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I wanted to watch this, and this film takes place, and it's about this family that goes stay with their eldest child's boyfriend's new family, and it's about sort of mild culture clash stuff. Kind of, you might lump it in with something like Meet the Parents or something, but Italian style. I love watching European films or foreign films that aren't geared towards an international audience at all. This is
No concessions.
totally, and so much of the humor is based around the nuances of Italian culture and family and society, and it's a wonderful insight into this world, but also incredibly silly at times, in a hugely endearing way. But so that's playing. Ennio Morricone is this incredible Italian composer who did all the spaghetti westerns, A Fistful of Dolls, and there's a documentary about him called Ennio, big 2.5 hour one, and they're playing one of his most significant works, Once Upon a Time in the West, a Sergio Leone film, that about a couple of years ago, you, in one of your classic Catching Me Off Guard moments, you asked me who my favorite old-fashioned movie star was in terms of having a crush on them, and I think I said Ava Gardner, but I've thought about it a lot since, and my definitive answer is Claudia Cardinale, who's this incredibly beautiful Italian actress who is the female lead in Once Upon a Time in the West. Very excited that is playing on the big screen. She actually died quite recently, and she is just transcendently pulchritudinous. And there's a new Sorrentini film, Paolo Sorrentini, who makes these sort of epics about starring Tony Seville as this sort of politician. He's sort of made a few with this guy. There's a film called Somebody to Love, which is a rom-com with a Greek chorus in it. Huge variety of stuff happening here. Very exciting festival. It goes over the next several months throughout the country. Starts on Tuesday in Auckland. Check out the Italian Film Festival. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. Who's your favourite American actor of Italian origin?
Oh, boy.
Male or female?
Danny Aiello.
Moonlighting.
Yeah, totally.
That's who I think of, but he was in the gangster films as well, wasn't he?
A little bit, yeah. Hudson Hawk.
Hudson Hawk. Yes, his masterpiece.
Della Ventura.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Cheers, Jesse.
That's Dominic Corry. If you'd like to read more on his thoughts on the Michael movie, it's been a popular article on the RNZ websites. Headline, Michael is the worst biopic I've ever had to sit through. That's Dom Corry, our movie reviewer.